It's my Diet Pepsi days. Okay.
Hey, everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. Today I have Bobby Burrell on, and he is probably one of the most foremost experts on hockey cards and God, whatever else. Bobby, what would you like
Food
to?
issue, merchandise, non-sports, Canadian, tops, O-Pee-Chee, a lot of the company histories, Canadian and American, that's North American. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'd like to talk to you about various things, and one of
Sure.
them is your website today.
Oh, great. Sure. Need them. I'm wearing the hat.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, that's a great logo.
Yes. Actually, Andy, who is actually my partner in this, Andy is the code writer, but he's also the CFL historian. And he approached me and asked me if I wanted to do the app like 7 years ago, and he's done all of the hard work, and I just gave him the hockey, which was, we're giving and taking back and forth because Canadian non-sports, Canadian CFL and OPG and hockey stuff kind of go together. There was a lot of similar things going on, especially with Parkers and OPG tops, what have you. So, so we've always been friends for the last 20 years doing that. But him doing the app was. He was already working on the app probably a year and a half, 2 years prior to me. But the CFL just doesn't have the following to really make an app worthy of, putting it out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, Canadian Football League.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very tough, it's not a very popular, the history of it is amazing. The amount of collectibles would astonish you, but it's not enough. And with hockey, it helps. It helps it greatly because hockey is very big on our end.
So is there I'm not terribly familiar, but is there a link between the CFL and Tops?
Yeah, there was Parkers and Tops because they did exclusively Canadian sets. Tops did, so they acquired the marketplace through OPG, of course. Yeah, so that started in 60, sometime in the 60s, 60, before the baseball, 62, 60, 60, 61. I'm not sure. Sorry. Hockey historian, my mistake.
Okay. So the CFL, the football, I think I've seen the 1960 CFL top CFL set. Is that the one? It's got like a black and white background of a photograph of like an action shot with a color photo of the player.
What year was that?
1960. Is that it?
I know they had some in the early 50s. Well, that's Parker's though, but Tops. I can't remember the first year of Tops. I should be more up on that, but I've been so buried in hockey that I think that slipped out of my my mind of late. But I know there's a great history of when Tops came in and took over the CFL or started distributing cards through OPG, of course. But a lot of the cards that were distributed initially were NFL, and then they finally went to CFL. I think it was 58 or I can't really remember. That's my mistake. But we'll talk about the things we do know.
Yeah.
Or we'll have Andy on at one time, and he'll give you the rundown of CFL back and forward, right?
So Chris from Stories and Cardboard says, I think it's 1958.
58, yeah. Because I you know how I remember that is the advertisement. I think on the back of the box, there's an advertisement for Bazooka Gum or Bozo Gum or something like that. And then the next year they did initials. And I remember things through wrappers and boxes a lot when it's not hockey related. So, and it's very similar to that. So 58 is probably correct.
Okay, great. So let's talk about Needham.
Sure. Let's talk about it. We just started talking about it. So, so Andy did the CFL side and I've done the hockey side. So what we've done is taken the culmination of my 3 books and went forward and put it into an app and a website as well. It's easy to use, easier to use than it is, I would say, eBay, or if you're even on Facebook. It's just as easy, if not easier. So anybody who has any hesitations about it's complicated, it really isn't. It's very simple. And I use the simple basics of the app. I don't go too deep into the other stuff that it can do. But surely that is available to everybody else. So what we've done is I've taken all that information and I've added to it. I fortified it. And there's all the other things that I didn't put in my books because of space and cost, that I always had on file. I just never had a place to put it. And who knew there was an app going to be coming around the, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road. And I'm ready for it. So, but I have actually upped the game a little bit with the app. I've added a lot of sets. I did a little bit more research and went a little bit more in depth because of unlimited space, adding extra pictures. Like there's tons of pictures. There's so many. I can't even count. I don't know what the official count is. 25,000, 30,000. With the CFL 50,000.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, it's just where do you stop? It's just, well, every set, front and back. If it's a 396 card set, it's like 800 scans that you have to do or pictures. Then that's just one set, and then add all the food issue and add all the merchandise as well. So.
I would say that you took over for Bob Lemke, and Bob Lemke basically did a lot of research, but obviously the problem he had was he had a book, so there's a lot more cards that I'm sure that we don't know about, and you can't know everything.
No.
And that's one of the fun things. I think one of the fun things about the hobby and why I stick around in it is that I don't know everything and I haven't seen everything yet, and I'm very impressed by what I've seen so far of your site. So.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people look at hockey and they see cards, and there is the merchandise and the food issue, which is just, well, it's actually bigger than. There's more issues. If we take 1970 or 71, just that year, for some reason something happened in that time period. I'm not really sure. It just seems like there was a lot of baby boomers born, and then they were coming of age right at that time period, because there was 15 different things issued between Coke and Pepsi and all these things in 1971. It was just Topps cards, Toronto Sun. It just never stopped, but only through those first few years.
Yeah.
So many, you only had so much money. You could only buy so much.
That actually makes a lot of sense. About 1968, 1970 or so. That's when Marvin Miller and Topps had their contract to license material. And I believe they upped the money on those contracts, because if you remember, the contract wars between Topps and Bowman, and from like 1950 to 53.
Mm-hmm.
All of this stuff is basically, it's out there, and so that stuff is kind of, it's easy to research if you know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so. The contracts were, I guess, for Bowman at least, 1 year plus another. But then Topps or Bowman had more contracts than Topps. And then what happened was that players were signing multiple contracts with both Topps and Bowman. It was getting kind of confusing, and who had the rights to who.
So there was there exclusivity at that time, though?
There was, but a lot of ball players and maybe Topps, was the contracts really they were being ignored for the most part, I think.
Well, I guess it's sort of like Frank Fleer too, because he went through the same thing up to in 65, 66. He Topps bought him out, but he retained some of the players' contracts exclusively. I think he had Mantle, did he not, or something like that? I can't remember who it was.
Yeah. So, well, Fleer initially in 1962, what they did was the Federal Trade Commission ended up, they filed a suit on Fleer's behalf against Topps.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and that wasn't that. I'm actually going to get into that in another video, a very lengthy one, but that wasn't resolved until 1965, 65.
It seemed like 65, 66, because they did a Don Drysdale set. It seemed like it ended right there.
Yeah.
Sort of at that point, which was 1966. So, yeah.
It actually ended, it may have ended Philadelphia, too. I'm not entirely sure about that.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, because I know the Canadian counterpart took over. A double Fleer came up to Canada, and I'm not sure if it was right at that time or pretty close to it. I'm very sure because we had the Fleer name up here.
Oh,
After
okay.
that. Yeah, the Fleer gum. Yeah, it was up here in Canada, up just actually, about 20 miles away. They had the plant there for such a long time. They had some stuff on display too. I went there back in the 80s and maybe early 90s, and they had a whole bunch of stuff on display. And do you think I was really looking? I was kind of looking, but not looking. So, I wish I could go back and do that, but they're no longer there. I think they've changed. It was called Continental Confections under the Fleer name, and that was the Canadian branch or arm. And like I said about Parker's, Parker's did do stuff after he finished with the hockey in '63. He did go on and he did do Treasure Island and Horrible Horoscopes and all these other companies. And they call that other one, that Donruss. They called it the Canadian Donruss, which was the I forget which issue it was, and it wasn't Donruss. It was Walt Disney owned the rights, and they would just get Parkhurst in Canada to distribute the Walt Disney Treasure Islands or whatever, and it was through Rayburn Products, and then in the States they used Donruss. But then they call it Canadian Donruss, but it wasn't because Donruss didn't own it. It was actually Walt Disney that owned the license. They would say, okay, you guys do the cards here, and then Parker's Grant Products at that time would do the cards up in Canada.
So let me ask you really quick about licensing and
Sure.
Fanatics and Topps and Panini. So this is really interesting because I think it's going to really come down to the length of the contracts between that the Major League Baseball and soccer and all that all these teams, not teams, but the leagues are giving out. There was one case where they said that they gave a contract for a 20-year contract to Fanatics.
That's almost in perpetuity for what it's worth, right? It's like 20 years is a long time.
Anything can happen in 20 years. Anything can happen in 5 years.
Well, we've realized anything can happen in 2 years, the pandemic, right? So, we are spinning a lot faster. I understand that, but 20 years is a long contract. It's actually, I think it's not even in their best interest to issue something that long because you can't see the future and what's going to happen. It's almost silly.
Right. And, so I kind of want to say that Fanatics versus Panini is really kind of drawn down the line between no, I don't like Fanatics or no, I don't like Panini, and I hope either company goes under. I'm not in that boat because I'm a kind of like a bystander, just watching what's going on and through a legal lens. Yes. I find this very interesting. And it's going to take a long time. This isn't anyone who's been through a court case like this knows that it's going to take a couple of years. So,
I guess the podcasters really like it, or shows like this. It gives them fodder for making videos, which is great. But for the collector, it's not helping them at all. It actually takes the collector out of the game in a certain way. I think you hurt collectors more than you help collectors with all this stuff going on. Limiting contracts and having exclusivity. It's hurting. It hurts the hobby. They might not think so because obviously they're looking at a profit mode where we're looking at a production mode, and we want competition out there. We want the cards to evolve and to be stimulated by, hey, they're doing this. We're going to do this. That Topps and it is Topps, so PG / and Parker's, that battle of the years that they were in business from 54 to 63, Topps would do this and Parker's would do that, and it got better and better every year. And if they didn't have any competition, it might have just been business as usual. And we might be looking at one set of cards that were kind of like, meh.
Yeah, and so like the one thing you can take away, well, you can take away a lot of things from this, but one of the things you can take away is the production of cards, the quality of cards from say between 1968 through especially the 1970s when it comes to Topps, and a a lot of the photographs, specifically on the baseball, and they're no good.
They're horrible.
Yeah, especially 70, 72, 73, 74.
Yeah, I would say the same thing too. I don't understand. Like, I guess in the early 70s, well, I'll take hockey for an example. 70, it's all photo shoot. You know, they're all same background, different colors, obviously, but a very a static picture. But then they tried to go on to the ice pictures, and some of them are just like, who's the star here? Because
Yeah.
with hockey, because you got, you know, the combination of 2, 3, 4 players. Sometimes it's like, who is they focusing on? Some of those, I think there's one Bobby Orr in 75 or something, or 76, where he's just grouped together with 3 other guys. It's like, that's his card. Like, really? Like, how far have we come? Like, I think their intentions were good, but the picking of the right pictures were horrible.
And I think I think a lot of it comes down to um, people who don't know how to take photographs. Now, I mean, I don't know exactly who was taking photographs for the most part during these years. I've heard a few names.
David Beers. There was a few others. But I guess per arena they would go, because I don't know if they traveled around and took pictures all the time, or they just used the person who was on site at whatever particular arena or stadium, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. And one of the funny things is, if you're looking at, say, like 1973 top baseball, some of the action shots, you're not entirely sure who is on, who they're trying to focus in on, you know, and it'll say a name, but like, so if you're not from the 70s, if you don't remember the 70s, or if you weren't born in the 70s, how would you know that? How would you know who you're talking about?
I guess they don't. And it makes for, you know, going forward, for the people who want to jump back into the history of cards, want to, you know, identify who the player is. And if it's not well in the card, maybe they won't want the card so much.
Yeah. I mean, so there was a guy named Buck Barker back in the 1930s and 40s, 50s, even 60s, who what he did was he identified a lot of the players on the T206 set, and he matched them up with photographs from, I believe, the Sporting News. And
Okay.
yeah, so that's pretty much how they know, like, who is actually on those cards, because they're pieces of artwork, and they're from, you know, technically photographs, raw photographs, but we don't have all those photographs, especially with the T206. So you know, the study of sports cards goes well beyond collecting cards, obviously, and I think that we, in a lot of cases, are just kind of like scratching the surface on a lot of the sets. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree 100%. And what I find with baseball is that there's a large calling for type 1 photos, getting back to the original players. If you can get the same one that's on a card, it's really nice. Hockey hasn't really got to that point yet. I've been collecting a few here and there, but they don't come up very often as much as baseball. But I'm trying to go that way, and I think matching that up, and I'm going to be doing that in the app, is putting original photos with the player, you know, certain players that you can find, and it just adds another. Yeah, is it almost too much? But if you have the picture, why not share it? It's unlimited. The app is unlimited for space. It doesn't cost for every extra picture. So I figured adding that little thing to do would help the app and help educate the player and the collector, but also maybe even start a collector collecting the original photographs, type 1, type 2.
Have you talked to Andrew Aronson?
No.
About okay, so that's Mike Aronstein's son. So
No.
he knows quite a bit about original photographs, especially from like 1911, 1912 or so. So he might be someone you might want to reach out to at some point.
Well, I think someone needs to put a tutorial on about what to look for. You know, type 1 is one thing. Type 2 is, you know, if it's within the first 10 years, but how can you determine 10 years if it was the 30s the picture was taken? Was it, you know, 40s that it was reproduced and you could call it type 2? Or does it 45 or 50? Like, how would you really even know? Can you really even tell by the texture of the paper? So if somebody could break all those type 1, type 2, type 3s down, I think that would help people, because otherwise people don't know. If they don't know, they're going, why would I pay $500 for that photo?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the danger too. If you don't know what you're looking for or
Yeah.
looking at.
So there's still lots of education left. You know, we're still a hobby that's in its infancy. If you really take a turn at going back to just to 2000, uh, we don't we didn't know most of the rappers. We didn't know most of, like, all that stuff has only come in the last 10 to 15, 20 years. All that other stuff and all the merchandise in the last maybe 10, where it's been documented, let alone the food issue in the last 15.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we've educated from, you know, 20 to 15 to 10 years. In the last 5 years, it's just adding new information for the most part.
So souvenir programs here. He's got something really interesting. I noticed some 55 Bowman photos are the same as in game day programs. Do you know anything about that?
No, I really don't, but I do know they did match a lot of those like team photos, like team issue would match program covers, pictures within the programs, and that's through the course of the history of hockey too. Because I'm really good with programs as well, and I've seen a lot of different ones that are matching. So I think that's a great thing, you know, that you can match up from inside the game day programs. That would be cool.
Yeah, that is. Well, let's talk about real quick wrappers, wax wrappers.
Sure, sure.
So are there any really very rare wax wrappers that that you know of from, say, hockey?
Well, in hockey, yeah, there's quite a few. One case in point was just in the last classic auction in 1930, a 33-34 Canadian chewing gum. You know, in 33-34, it was just right at the end of I guess the Depression, and it seemed like four companies came out at the same time: Canadian chewing gum, Worldwide Gum, OPG, and Hamilton Gum. So these four companies came in 1933-34 with a set of trading cards and bubble gum. How does that work? You know, four companies having the same epiphany. I don't know. Anyways, it was probably a savvy salesman for a printing company or something. But regardless of that, that's not been proven. But that's my thought. But one of those wrappers, there was a 1932, 33-34 Canadian chewing gum. It was their first year, and the wrapper was made of glassine. Now, glassine is a very delicate wrapper. It's almost like rice paper. Tears very easy. So when a kid would open it, with a wax wrapper, you have some give and take, where these tear like almost like a cello. So when you open it, it was usually shred or 2 or 3 pieces. So that one sold, and with the hammer and the juice, it finished up at $16,000 for a wrapper. For one wrap. I think that's almost has to be a record for a wrapper. Like, I know there's some old wrappers in baseball and football, but that's pretty hefty. That's got to be a record. I owned that wrapper 15 years prior, and I think I sold it for $2,500. So,
oh my God.
I know. I waited. I got it. It's kind of funny how it came about, and I will tell you the story. Actually, I think Gary Kareem who was the past president of OPG. He was going through some of his extra storage rooms, and a guy named friend of mine, Selby Colson. He acquired the wrapper, and then he made a deal with me, and I purchased it from him. And I kept it. I scanned it. I coveted it because a lot of those, I don't like getting pictures out there of rare things, just giving it out there, because everybody's reprinting the heck out of everything, and it's nullifying the real true rarities that are really out there. And and they're just trying to make $5-10 off of each one. It's just, and then it's out there. People want to be surprised. It's sort of like my wife when our son Stephen was growing up, and she would tell him, "Oh yeah, for your birthday we're gonna." I don't tell him. Give him a little bit of a surprise, right? Because I would be like nothing, and then he'd be surprised and be like, "Yeah," but anyways, mothers like to talk and things. Right. So, and it's very much like these rare pictures that you have. if you just throw them out there, it's funny. I sent a rare picture to somebody. I said, don't share it with anybody. It came back around to me and they go, Bobby, don't share this with anybody, but check this out. And I went, here's my picture. What, is this like, because otherwise then it's just out there. There's no fun left in it. There's no, it's just out there. And then people are reprinting stuff. So that bothers me too. So, I've kept the pictures tight as possible. Now they're basically out there for the most part because the amount of wrappers that came up were all from this gentleman's collection who I did sell that wrapper to. So they had a lot of pretty great wrappers. Most of them $500, $600, $700, $800, $900 on a few. This one for $16,000, just a record breaker.
That's amazing. Do you know of any unopened packs? Maybe
From that,
from the 30s.
No, we don't know of any. The only no, there was a salesman sample for O-Pee-Chee from 37. Other than that, and it came in a little box. It said salesman sample on it, surprisingly, and it came with it was a wrapper, and the wrapper was already opened at that point. And 1 cent packs. See, 1 cent packs. You're going to have either have a gum stain or you're going to have a wax stain because you only have one card, right? So you're going to get one side or the other. So regardless, they're really, really hard to survive unopened. And their sealing methods were definitely different. I don't even really know the sealing methods. It's almost just like they were heat sealed, like they just closed it and they maybe ran it over something that was warm to warm the wrapper. That's all I can really say until we got into the more modern times in the 50s when they started to, use the roller seals. I'm not too sure about the early baseball, but the 1 cent from the 30s, hockey wise, it was just a basic heat seal.
So how about from the 1910s? Any unopened tobacco stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was sort of looking into that a little while ago, and I was realizing that a lot of people who have dated the 1910s, they've dated them incorrectly. So some guy was saying that, he goes, he's a tax stamp guy. He goes, I'll tell you exactly when, where, and what district. And I went, oh, wow. I was going to say, he goes, no, that's 1928. What are you doing? It's not 1910. And people are selling it as 1910, because the package stayed the same. As we Capo stayed the same for like 20 something years. A lot of these Coronet and all these other ones that were out there, they didn't really change their packaging very much at all. And I find that I don't think we've ever really found one for 1910 unopened.
A C55. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be something. We found the printing stone. This.
Yeah, so they did find a printing stone, right?
Yeah, really? My friend Jason found it. He was he said, Bobby, I was at a little. He went to a little show around the corner from where he was, and he said this guy had all these stones on like these printing stones are about 25 pounds, about 2 inches by 12 by 12. A lot of people use them in their driveways. They said if you look on the other side, there's probably some printing of something on there, right? Because what they would do is they'd use them, and because they use sandstone, they could sand it down, get it flat again, and reuse it again, and keep reusing it. So he said, Bobby, I was just at this little novelty show, and he goes, the guy had a stone there, and then he said, I started looking, and I said, hey, I seen the lacrosse design, I seen the hockey design on the back, and I went, oh my God. So he bought it for less than $100. I don't even think he paid that. And then he brought it to me, and I scanned it. It's like I almost broke my scanner. And I said, what do you want to do with it? And he goes, well, he's sort of a historian. He's very much of a non-sports, very good at non-sports, Canadian non-sports. And he said, I'll probably sell it and buy some non-sports and stuff like that. So he consigned it in an auction house, classic. And I think it went for $15,000 or something. It was just, it's priceless. It really, in today's world, I would say it's priceless. Back then, it was sort of like when something is new, we really don't know the true value of something. They always say, the second thing sold, the second time a rare piece is sold is usually the good dollars will get it. The first time it's like, who wants to chance it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't know whose collection it ended up in. I probably wouldn't say, but it sort of would belong in the Hall of Fame. It would be great right beside, some of those beautiful cards.
I think so. And, it's funny because with the C55s and even the T2R6s, we don't have any artwork. We don't have any original artwork for any of this stuff.
Well, there's no artwork because it was stone lithography.
Okay.
So basically, what it's a Da Vinci thing where they would etch on that stone in reverse the player's picture. Then they'd add wax and ink and salt and all this other thing, and then they would come up with a thing, and they would put the paper over it, press it, and they would have an image. So once that stone is sanded down and reused for the next, it's gone. So what they did is they did the outline. So the outline would stay, and then each picture would have been done separately on different stones. So I'm sure if they ever survived, even just one picture, but that artwork is something. It would be something to have. But so I guess you could say for the 10s, we have hockey has the only printing stone ever found used for the so-called artwork. Now, was there artwork that they used to make those is the question. Now, is that any of that been found? No. But I'm sure they had a rendition or a picture. I don't know if they used a newspaper. We have no idea. We're going back to the turn of the century there, so it's pretty tough.
Right. So that, I mean, we also don't have any full sheets. The only full sheet that I'm aware of from that era is the OBAC 1909 or 1910.
Well, I did make the determination that they printed the sheets. They would be all the same player across. Because of the stone lithography, they would print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right across. It wasn't like you'd put it here because you didn't have a stone that big. Your stones were very small, and the printing press was very small to turn the pressure down. So, anyway, sorry.
That makes a lot of sense actually. That they would have the same player.
Yeah. So
going up or across.
Yeah. So there's strips, but probably no sheets. So looking for an uncut sheet from 1910 is probably an impossibility. Maybe even 20s is impossible. Oh no, 20s isn't. 20 isn't. That's when the press started in around the 20s, and that's what really made a lot more companies come out with cards. It made it much easier for them to do cards. Where the 1910s, we're lucky to get cards if you consider the artwork and how they had to go through the process of doing it. Geez, we're lucky to have anything.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the 1914 Baltimore News Babe Ruth.
Oh, the rookie / no rookie?
Yes.
Yeah, that really surprises me that they would push the envelope of being a rookie card. I guess it really doesn't. Business is business, and they want to forward their business as much as they want to. That's fine. It's certainly an oversized. It's not a traditional standard size card. Plus, it is exclusively from Baltimore, which eliminates rookie status anyways. It has to be nationally produced or something, across country. Plus, it has a schedule on the back and a picture on the front, which is basically it's a schedule. There's no hockey cards. There's no baseball cards with schedules on the back, is there?
I believe there's a schedule.
Mainstream. Like Bowman or any Tops or anything prior to that. Is there?
Schedule.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
So then it's a schedule.
Yeah.
Basically, I was just trying to eliminate those processes. It's like a schedule is a schedule. So
yeah,
we'll leave it at that and just say that's fine. You want to call it a rookie card in your auction, or I think it was Robert Edwards. And actually, I think even SGC, when they had those little group of 3 people, like Peter and a couple of his employees were sending around, I think they were talking the rookie up as well at that time, which was, I think, a little unfair. We go by what we see on the news, and if we feel that it's not like we're even going to be in the running for stuff like that, for the most part. But if you can, it's easy to convince to lie to somebody than it is to convince them that they've been lied to, and that's the toughest part that we're really looking at here, is that the upper echelon people who buy these things, does it really matter to them? But is it the truth? No.
Right.
So do we really care that some super millionaire really got that? And whatever, we move on. We focus so much on the big items that are for sale, the Gretzky box, case, all that other stuff, when we won't even be in the close running.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear what Victor, the rookie card specialist, has to say about this. He's got a great channel, by the way. If any of you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But I actually first heard this from Victor, and apparently that card sold for 7.2 million at REA, and REA should know better because
No,
you know so
their pockets are quite full. Don't you worry. If they knew better, then they may be looking at 2.3 or 1.5.
so yeah. So I have a slight problem with a lot of the auction houses for just a simple reason that
Just you? I think everybody out there can say so.
Not just me. I'm sure there's
a lot. There's a lineup out there.
Yeah, and so don't ever let a good story
go to waste.
Yeah, but it's just a lot of the hobby is based on great stories, but are they based on fact? And I would say the farther back you go, it's just a blend. You don't know if it's accurate or not. Especially with like say the T206 Honus Wagner and that story, because I've heard several
smoking, non-smoke, yeah.
Right. And not only, or did he sign with the American Caramel Company because a lot of his friends were signing with the American Caramel Company, and it seems to be all Pittsburgh Pirates and Philadelphia Phillies connections with Daniel Levine, and that is also a very good possibility as well. You can't discount that. Or did he just want more money, or he didn't? Obviously, he probably didn't like tobacco, but
is there not a interview on an old newspaper that would really help define that?
There is. So John D. Wagner, he met him back in 1942 when he was in the service.
Two Wagners?
Yeah, John D. Wagner.
Not a relationship?
No.
Okay, there we go.
He was a really famous hobby pioneer, really from the beginning, and so he was, I guess, on leave or something like that, and he was watching a Harrisburg Senators game, and he was stationed in Harrisburg at the time, and he met Honus Wagner there, and he asked Honus Wagner what the story was about that, and Wagner had told Wagner that he didn't want kids to start smoking, and it makes sense, but at the same time too, stories are often.
He could have told the story to him to make it feel more moral why he did it.
Yeah.
But then Honus Wagner is on cigar boxes later, like a few years later.
Yeah.
So that story could be just a story within a story.
Yeah, before and after, and he's also in the 1948 leaf. He's chowing down on some kind of tobacco.
Oh, there you go. So it almost quashes that story, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So he didn't like smoke. He liked candy. I like candy. Depends on what kind.
Chewing tobacco kind of looks like candy.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, but back in the day, it looked pretty exciting, I guess, to kids, because you bite a piece of bubble gum, you bite chewing tobacco. I don't know, just saying. But the story, I guess it's a great story because of the moral value it has. But the true value is really what the truth of the story is. And I'd really like to know that. It wouldn't change anything. You can't change anything in the hobby. I just wrote an article about, how long does it take to change the hobby, change an issue or an art. It just takes so long.
I have an answer to that, I think.
Oh, yes.
How long it takes?
Yes.
For one generation to die off and another generation to take its place.
Really? Interesting.
I mean, if you think about it like this, the guys who were collecting cards in the 1930s and building up the hobby, John D. Wagner, obviously, and uh, Jefferson
Jefferson
Bird,
Bird. Yep.
and those guys. So they're basically out of the hobby by like the 1960s, and you get a whole new group of hobbyists in there.
So they take their information and go forward. So they
Sometimes,
disseminated everything, and then we take that next step. But we're really in another next step generation, actually. Well, like I was talking about from 2000, computers came in, eBay came in. We started to see things better. Research became a lot easier, and now we're at the critical mass of every newspaper's almost online and what have you. It's
yeah. So one of the problems though is that I heard this from Bill, what's his name, the guy who chopped up the Honus Wagner, Bill Mastro.
Master.
So
Yeah.
Bill Mastro had said that he had known a few of these guys, these older collectors, and he said they were very insulated and they didn't like to give out information, and they kind of kept all their cards. He said basically that these guys had 90% of the sports cards in their possession, and it wasn't until they started to pass on that those cards were basically released to the public. And Frank Nagy is one of those guys who
Yeah.
didn't see it that way. He wanted people to have cards, basically.
That was a
And
great video. You guys got to watch that video that he did on Frank Nagy. It was really well done, and it was nice to know about Frank and how the type of guy he was. He was very smart hobbyist.
yeah, I think so. This is really interesting too. The hobby doesn't follow conventional wisdom. Mantle is still the golden boy. Yeah, he is, and you're right. Um, Obviously, the hobby is different now than the way people collect now than when it was when I first started getting into it in in the '90s, vintage. So I mean, technology changes obviously, but in the way we collect cards changes as well, and the way we get information. And I mean, I would say I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. Is um, we don't have obviously all the information that those other collectors had back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and some of it wasn't correct.
Yes, I know.
So,
And that's where we pick up and move on. I think I was saying in my interview with Victor is that we've taken that information. Beckett produced a lot of great things for cards, but they went forward. They never went back. That was the problem. And they took some information from people and they did kind of update things. Sometimes they got the wrong information. Like I think they've imprinted that the cards were cut with wires, which they never were cut with wires.
I heard that story.
That still goes on today, and people still don't really know. But that's how hard the old information dies.
Yeah.
And until we start getting more out there in information, like a lot of people don't like looking at us, a couple old guys talking. But yeah, we're just telling you the truth of what went on back then.
Yeah.
The blades were not sharpened very well, and even Gary Carina admitted that to me. He said that his quality control was very, very low because they were running 24/7, just pumping stuff out. So the card they were pushing so hard to get through the cards that it tore opposed to cut. And then when they did sharpen the blades, obviously they were running 24/7. Hockey, it was 24/7. Beatles 24/7. Go through the card.
Was it this the 1951 Parkhurst?
That was guillotine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they used the guillotine in the first couple of years, and the cement mixer. Have you read my article there?
Yeah, it was a great article.
Oh yeah, that was a detailed one. I went through it pretty good. So
yeah, I loved that. That was awesome.
Yeah, but that was true. And they use a guillotine, and with the guillotine, if you ever cut anything of any substance on one of those guillotines, I do have one, a manual hand one, and I'm sure it was an industrial size one. You get that slippage because it starts to pull, and it carries over. So that's what was going on. So I'm sure that trying to get as many cards out as possible, it cuts maybe about this much, but then you're trying to do a little bit more to get a few more out. and then it starts to pull and slip, and that's what they ran into, unfortunately.
So when it comes to grading and grading cards, how much does each grading company factor into any of this, what you're talking about right here?
Yeah, I think that's always been the issue with 51 is like, if it's oversized, what do you do? Well, actually, if it's oversized today, it'll go into PSA as being perfectly sized. If it, if you know what I mean, hint, nudge, wink.
Yeah.
If it's undersized, I don't know. I guess they can't officially do that. If it's diamond cut, it really won't fit in the because the size will be too far out and it won't fit in there properly. So what do you do at that point? So I'm sure they've had their issues with 51. After 52 wasn't so bad. 53, I think they got better at what they did. And by 53 or 4, they had gotten rid of that, and then they got into a slitter. After that, they graduated to that point. But their first year for sure, their second year probably, and the third year maybe.
Okay.
There's no definitive timeline, but it seems like it was that time that they, that time where the cuts were definitely off, especially their first year because they're new. I'm supposed to be putting things up and putting more quality. Yeah, definitely.
I'm kind of like a stickler for standards in the hobby, and I think that basically every magazine and every grading company should stick to one standard, so it's not confusing to even like new collectors who are just getting into the hobby, either vintage or modern. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with every hobby, it doesn't matter whether you're collecting Stradivarius violins or you're collecting, porcelain figurines, there should be sort of a standard, but you end up with different cliques or different groups, and they sort of somewhat predetermine what those things are, and they become maybe the more outspoken one. It's sort of like the VHS beta thing. The betas were better quality, but they cost more. The VHS were cheaper, and they went forward and they became successful. So everyone thought they won because of their quality, but they lost because of their beta lost because of their price points. And that was really the beta VHS kind of wars. And I think we're in the same thing here too, is we have these people with one ideology and the other with a different thought. And it depends who gets in, who has that power. If, as a historian or, somebody who's really an authority is really responsible, innately responsible for putting the right information forward and not speculating. And if speculating, say so before, not just because I think maybe people want to puff their chest out thinking that they know something, but it's just speculation. And, you got to really put that speculation in there. It's nice to hint at a few things, at what we think, like Honus Wagner, his card, was it smoking or not? We don't know. So we try to dig as much fact out as possible. But I think a lot of people want to just get the information out there. I've seen many people write articles with so much speculation. And you just say, that doesn't even make sense. It doesn't, what I know, I said, it kind of goes down the wrong road for me. And that's just the way the hobbies are. No governing body in a hobby. So what are we going to do? We have to rely on the stewards like us, that we're looking into things deep enough, and that we outsource, and then we take information from people in the chat or people out in just a regular hobby collector, and we channel that all through us. And I always call myself the hobby sponge, just because I'm just taking in, little drops of water from everybody, and then I squeeze it out and wring it out into a book or an app.
Yeah. And so getting back to like information and technology. So this is kind of universal, I think, what we're talking about throughout, like say, Egyptology and archaeology too, because they're basically facing the same things that the hobby here is.
Exactly.
But it's a little different. We're talking about cards, and they're talking about basically like what civilization was here, who built this, and when. But the thing is that nobody likes to say that they're wrong, right? So that's universal to human beings. nobody likes to be wrong, but if I have noticed that when I was growing up, they were talking about the Clovis culture, and it became extinct, and there, like the things that we know about the Clovis culture today are non-existent, or they're not non-existent, but they're not talked about the way they were when I was a kid, and uh, basically what I'm getting at it here is that with new discoveries and new technology, we know that the stuff that we thought was correct is no longer correct, and
It's
it's
hard to
really yeah,
it is hard to dispel the citations once they've been copied and written in 10 different books from one citation. So you have 10 books to contend with.
yeah,
And then all the internet stuff on top of that. Even though you prove it right, it still stays wrong because of the amount of information is out there. And that's what another problem that I would have with AI going forward. Are they going to take one hobby historian who's done the facts, or are they going to take the common opinion of 40 laymen's writing articles about
yeah.
tops
And it's
cards, peachy cards being cut with a wire? I don't know.
and it seems so like the mainstream press. I think 9 times out of 10, if they're going to do a documentary, they're most likely going to use the people who are more outspoken and more out there. Basically, have a better press agent, right?
Sure.
And maybe a guy like me, or unfortunately, a guy like you. And you and I may be correct on what we know, but they're going to go for the guy who is talking the loudest, who's out there the most, and
Mhm.
that's a that's kind of a problem. Um,
Well, the
as I said,
problem is the Babe Ruth. There's the
yeah,
problem.
yeah,
So you
um,
have a third party and an auction house. How do you dispute them?
yeah.
RA's been around a long time, but I've been a historian a long time. So, you know, they've been dabbling in whatever they do. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I like the story of Rob Lifson and how he founded REA, and how
Mhm.
he acquired a lot of his cards. And he's got some really great stories. Um, but at the same time, too, I think when I go through my auction catalogs here and I look at the write-ups, sometimes I'm like, okay, like how did you come to this conclusion, and where are your notes, right? So a lot of, like, most times I think that they didn't have any side notes to say here's where I got this information from, and you know we don't even see it in the regular press, so why would we see it
Well,
in
that's
a
their
regular?
citations, right?
Yeah, there's citations. Yeah,
So it's unfortunate there's no footnotes added to things, and I like adding footnotes at the end. You know, I like to disclose whatever I can at the end, so that at the end of the story, it's refortified that this is maybe speculation on your writer's part or what have you. And yes, Stories in Cardboard, rubber bands was my enemy in 1970.
yeah,
It's my biggest enemy. Oh my god.
yeah. Mine too. I
We
saw
didn't
my
have top
grandmother.
loaders. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah, I saw my grandmother wrap my 1987 tops and rubber bands, and I freaked out. And I mean, it's 1987 tops, so it's like pigeons in the sky. But even so, you know, I think that's every collector's nightmare. Although, here's something funny though that um, Chris just kind of reminded me about in rubber bands.
Mhm.
So, and I want to ask you about this. Going forward over the last maybe 10 years or so, do you think that we're going to have more PSA 10s than we did prior? Just because all the kids are all they're doing is they're taking the card from the pack and just putting it directly into a sleeve or something, or sending it off to PSA.
Well, most certainly we will have more because anything from this point on is going to be more. But
Right.
in comparison, yes. So what you do is you have people who are repairing cards and very, very good at it. So you're going to get a lot of nines, 9.5s that might go in for 10s. It's going to happen. It's typical. It's not going to happen a lot, but it will happen. Yes, getting into the pack. I understand that a lot of these fancy cards that they have problems cutting them perfectly without having border issues. So as they say, every card's perfect when it comes out of the packet. It really isn't the case. But many of the simple cards, yes, they're perfectly cut. They're well done. They're measured with a laser. It's you can't really almost go wrong on some of those. But yeah, the 10s going forward. Are we going to see like vintage cards go to 10s? I don't know. Will we see another Gretzky 10? I don't know. I don't think there's any Gretzky 10 to begin with. Those two are certainly not 10s. But any which way, that's neither here nor there. Will we get another 10? 10 is really tough for a vintage card. Even going to 79, we call it vintage. I call anything pre-89 vintage. Anything. Well, it's just when they got rid of the gum and it stopped being, for kids. Then it became more of a marketing investment type of deal. Then you're getting things done in cases by the case, vending, and they did all that stuff. So once the gum left, and that's when I think the dominant part of the collector investor got into in the 90s there. It happened in baseball maybe a little bit earlier, but still, once the gum comes out, then they know the kids at the buying packs off the thing, they don't care about them.
Yeah.
And no company came in as a gum company. They all came in as just upper deck. We're just a card company. I don't know what they were before that, but
the transition is really fascinating, and there's certain parts of the hobby that really kind of forgotten about even today. So, that part in the hobby from say 1999, 2000 to 2007, 2008, and it's kind of like a lost time in just trying to find information on what is going on in that. And so I find that there are certain parts of the hobby that are they're blank spaces, if you will.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of blank spaces. I think mostly the 40s is a very blank space because of the war.
Yeah.
They had paper rationing, food rationing. So gum was, they didn't have as many choices in confections because, sugar was rationed. There were a lot of meats were rationed. So it was certainly a different time. So we have a big gap there. And then we start the 50s, but then we get into the information age. It seems like every decade there's something going on that's a little bit different than the last decade.
And I found too is that we have information literally at the tips of our fingers like no other generation.
True.
Yet we're so divided in like what we believe because of it, and it's really hard to kind of sift through everything. It's like kind of like information overload, and you don't know what to believe. And
I just wonder what led REA and SGC to talk the rookie up. I don't understand it. I know it's marketing, but like, really, do you think that people are that dumb out there? Honestly,
some people want other people to be dumb, maybe to like control how they think or control how they behave.
But it's easily dispelled.
Yeah.
So that's almost embarrassing, and you can't get out of embarrassing. I'm just thinking forward. So anytime that anybody steps out of line, I'm going to be there to say something. Any third party that gets out of line, I'm there because I want the truth to go forward. I don't care. I don't have a reputation for being a bad boy, but I'll just be the honest boy.
Right.
And going forward. So they don't scare me in any way. I'm not worried about my reputation. My reputation stands very well. As I work hard, I make a penny an hour, and that's it. There you go.
Yeah. There's there are a lot of YouTubers that go after certain like people or groups.
Yeah.
Raul from AIH Sports comes to mind. A good guy. I enjoy his stuff. Some people like take it a little too far though.
Well, people love bad news. They get good hits, but it's stimulating. More people like to watch stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like, I like watching some of the bad news, but the bad news is where you get your information from, the real information. So that's what I'm really looking for. For the most part, it's entertainment, but you do get into the Babe Ruths and the other cards like that, and people try to turn things as much as they can because they're looking for profit. When history speaks louder than the money will ever speak. So
yeah. Politics, religion, and trading cards. Well, trading cards are my religion. So
yeah, and I'm spouting the politics on them. So there you go.
yeah.
We've covered the bases.
And speaking of politics, really quickly, I actually did a video on this gentleman right here.
Mr. Taft.
Yeah, this is William Howard Taft, and he actually, I'll probably do another video on him because he really is a very fascinating person. His presidency was a little, it's not bland, but it was very
So
short.
what exact year for us Canadians can you put Taft in there so we just all know?
1909 through 1913. So that fits right into the T206,
The
T205.
C series in hockey. Wow.
Yep, C55. What's the other one? The 1910?
C55, 56, and 57. 3
Okay.
years. Yeah.
57, the black and white.
12,
set.
15. Yes, actually, the real photos. Yes, I really like that. The other ones are cartoony to me, but that's my personal opinion.
Which one is that? The 1910 or 1911?
Both.
Both. I love that 1911 set with the hockey sticks on the
Okay.
side.
Yeah.
But that's just me. That's the artist in me. So
yeah, see, that's the thing about the artwork. I kind of like the real photos because we don't have many of the players back then, and a lot of those photos from the C57 or the 1912-13 cards of hockey, they were taken. I think about 32 of the set were taken from the Sweet Kappa original postcard photos.
Oh wow!
So you have the original Vesna, you have the original, Art Ross, you have all those original pictures, which is great because we really don't have many of those guys back then. So that's where I like the real photos. I love artwork on boxes. I love the artwork on things, but I don't like the artwork of players so much. That's just my thing, Whereas you're an artist, I understand that, we definitely have a little difference in opinion, but the appreciation is there in both ways, though.
Yeah, well, art like everything else, movies and books is subjective. So
sure,
and maybe baseball cards or sports cards as well is subjective.
Yeah, some people say I really like this design. I'm going, it's just a border. I don't know. There's the name. There's nothing to that set. It's just like, because Mantle's there and you really like Mantle. So that's what it is. So people predetermine like, oh, I love the Gordie Howe rookie. I don't. It's a horrible picture. Come on, guys.
I agree.
54, that's a different story, but that was made from artwork that we have yet to see.
Oh, there's no artwork for those Packers?
Not that we found, no.
Wow.
No, not from Parker's, from the 54 tops.
Oh, from the 54 tops.
Yeah.
I actually, you know what? I do have a photo of some artwork from the 54 tops, and I meant to show it to you, and I forgot.
Oh, okay.
So
no problem.
I'll have to do that after.
Do you know the artist who did it?
No, that's the one thing I don't know. We don't know who the artist was, or I don't think we know the company that
Woody Gelman would know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's no longer around, obviously, but I wonder.
Do you have a Ouija board?
No.
We could.
I read it yesterday.
Oh, okay. That's too bad. We could have
brought him back.
Exactly.
Well, he was kind of a scammer, really, if you think about it, right? Because his stepdad is Joe Rosen, I think, and he's printing. Let's just talk hockey, let alone baseball, football, basketball. He's printing all the cards because Topps has the license for the hockey cards. So they're making the cards they're making the artwork there. And then they ship up the artwork to O-Pee-Chee to print. But in 54, they shipped up the cards. But he did a whole bunch of print runs, and he's got his dad selling them through as a wholesaler in the United States. Sets for what was it, $5-6? 54 Topps.
I think
55,
so.
57. There's no 55 for Topps. 57, 58, 59, 60. Keeps going through. Then his stepdad dies, and then Woody Gelman takes over. So he's he's selling and making the product, and then he's shipping it up. So I'm sure O-Pee-Chee's sitting there going, well, how are these guys getting all the, So a lot of people across the border or close to the border there were kind of going, I could just order a set through I think it was card collectors. I forget what it was called.
Yeah, he had a place in New York, right?
Yeah,
New York City.
Yeah, and he ran that right up to the late
60s. He's a really fascinating guy, though.
Still. Oh, shoot, yeah, he was.
And what he must have had in his collection and people that he knew.
And where it went.
Yeah.
But
I've heard,
Topps Vault get a lot of that stuff, or was it mostly... Like, I don't know if he had much of a personal collection. It seemed like he ran that whole art department, so he was in control of everything. So probably his collection was what he had in his archives on the Topps premises, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so he and there was another guy named Ben Solomon.
Yeah.
And he's not really that well known, but I think both of these guys came from the Fleischer Art Studio. From the same studio that did Superman, and so they had that background.
Solomon and him partners.
Yeah.
And then he went finally to Topps in about 56, 57.
Actually, so it was earlier because they both he and
wasn't officially though. I think like he was still working there. He was still working at Topps, but until he officially, And anyways, there's some great information there about that. But regardless, where is his archives? Where are all his cards?
I heard that George Mall had some.
Oh yeah,
that's what I heard. But because the 1933 Gaudi was it the Napoleon was going to be Lajoie. That card in the 33 Gaudi set, number 106, it was actually supposed to be Leo DeRocher.
Oh, really?
Yep. Huh. And that was actually, I think, found. There was, I think, in one of those guys' collections, one of those guys had that card plus a bunch of other 33 with different numbers.
Oh,
and it was, I think, eventually found in with George Mall's collection, but I think he got those cards from Gelman, and obviously George. So the thing is, like, I think it's the other way around actually, because George Mall, he modeled the 1941 play ball after the 206s. He loved the T206s and the 33 Gaudis as well, but specifically the 33 Gaudis. So he modeled what Bowman was doing off of Gaudi.
Oh, everybody copied everybody back then.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, your competition puts out something, and you go, hey, we got to do something like that too. Why don't we? We'll do something better. And that's competition. With Fanatics, it's like nobody can do better because it's just us.
Yeah, I don't particularly like what Fanatics is doing right now, because it does look like it's monopoly or trying to take over all of this stuff.
I think it's more than a monopoly. I think it's just monopolization is probably the word we can best use for it. That they're in that process of that'll never really be concrete. So unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to be. They're 10Xing. I think it was a ploy to tell everybody the hype of when it was going on. I think they honestly, here's my true thought, is they bought in thinking this thing was not going to stop. I think they got caught.
Yeah.
Because they came from behind. Remember, they went behind, they went behind the curtain and they said, okay, we're going to sneak in and steal everything. So all that going on during the pandemic and the uprise of cards. And then all of a sudden we come out of it, they've acquired it. And now it's like, our 10X thing is not, sort of working out right now, but we're working on it. We got lots of surprises for you. Got some great commercials. That'll get everybody in.
All right. So, before I lose my train of thought here on something else.
We can go everywhere. It's horrible.
Yeah. So Chris has something really interesting here. He says, I still say that Berger didn't dump cases of 52 tops. And anybody,
That's been proven. It's been proven.
yeah, so that's what I think too. But I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say about this too.
Yeah.
Because Berger actually did actually say that he did dump cases in 1960 off a barge in the Hudson.
Yeah.
So, but it's always something kind of fun and
been confirmed at a few different sources, credible sources. Because I didn't believe it at the beginning because I'm going, well, who dumps stuff? But you take your timeline back to that time period, it's just just dump it.
Yeah, they must have had like that. So they had a warehouse, right?
Yes.
Tops did. That's where they stored that. They had to have, or they must have given a lot of. So maybe Woody Gelman. Is it Gelman or Gelman?
Gelman.
Gelman. So Woody Gelman must have, and him and Bruce Yelko must have had access to all those boxes and whatever, and then.
Oh, Bruce Yelko. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So whatever.
I always remember because the guy said it sounds like gecko, and I went, okay. So Bruce Yelko. It's Woody Gelman and Yelko. Okay.
Yeah. Gelman and Yako. So whatever those guys couldn't sell, I'm sure. I mean, they had direct access to tops back then, obviously.
Yako did not.
Oh, he didn't.
He did indirect. But remember, Woody Gelman's holding the sword, so to speak, and Yako is kind of getting in through Gelman because you can't go anywhere else. Where are you going to go? So that's what happened. So I think it was Gelman to Yako, more than likely. So I don't think Tops even really had much to do or say. I think it's just production runs, and was Tops making money from this? I would assume so, but we don't really know.
I think what ended up happening was that by the last series, they overproduced cards. We know that they overproduced the first series.
Well, it's their first year, so
right.
they're guesstimating. It's very much like Parkhurst. They did 25 million cards for Canada with a population of 20 million people. So he said he went to 18 million his second year. So I'm assuming the difference between 25 and 18 was really what they sold probably in 1951 for cards. So 18 million. Yeah. So there was 7 million left over. And that's why they made the boxes and the wrappers with all the leftover sheets that they had printed, because they got them from the printer, but they cut them up themselves. So because they were cutting the cards themselves, they were trying to save as much money. So they didn't want the printer to cut them. They were cutting them themselves. So they could cut as per needed. And that's why all those sheets were left over. And then they made a die cut for the wrappers and the display boxes. And that's why they said, hey, we got all this, we got 7 million worth of, cards or whatever, sheets left. We got to use them somehow. Why don't we just make the other ones? And that's what happened there.
Yeah. And
the same thing that happened, and I think that's the first interaction with O-Pee-Chee, is that Top says, hey, listen, why don't we send some up to Canada? And they called up O-Pee-Chee, say, hey, listen, we got a whole bunch of, and they were up here because we know. So we got the last series, which we got the high number series. That's why all of the mantles are up here. There's so many mantles up here back in the 80s, like you wouldn't believe how many there was. There was so many. And the Americans came up, sorry guys, with your dollars being so strong at certain points. And you're getting, there was a time you're like 40 cents on the dollar. We were, you guys were getting $1.60 for your, dollar. And it was like, and they bought so much stuff up here. And most of the mantles went back in the 90s sometime.
Did Mr. Mint, Al Rosen, did he ever go up to Canada?
Not that I know. We didn't really have a show till 91. And Alan, Mr. Mint, no, he wasn't. Canada's still small even back then. It was a big hobby, but I mean, it was sort of the beaten path. And there was other shows going on in the United States that were even bigger than the expo, the Toronto Sports Card Expo, even at that time. All the shows has been around for a long time. Down through the United States, let alone the national.
Yeah.
So why would he come up?
Okay.
It would make sense because if he knew or understood, like nobody ever realized why there were so many mantles that came out of Canada, why people had a lot in their collections. And I've heard of old dealer stories about how many people had mantles. People come into their shops with a mantle. Lady had a couple mantles. It's like, wow, 90, 91, 92, 93.
I mean, that's amazing because I've always said that, well, first off, in Beckett, the old Beckett's from the 80s, they always have the 52 tops mantle as a double print, right?
I've heard triple. I don't know why, but
Okay.
we haven't found a cheat, have we?
I don't know. I don't think so. If they did have a sheet, how much would that actually go for?
I don't know. You know, there's been a little. There's a sheet just went. A basketball sheet went for 200,000 just recently. I forget what year it was. It just went off. I can't remember the year of the sheet. But sheets were very hot for a certain point in time. It seemed like up until about 2010, 12. Prior to that, any sheets would get major money. Now, today going forward, a lot of the sheets have really dropped in price. I don't know why. And I think there was a time that people were cutting the sheets and going through Beckett and they would grade them. So you could get high grade cards out of the sheets. Yeah. And it seemed like that got old or something because Beckett still kept doing it. And it seemed like in 2012 that the sheets went down quite a bit.
I did hear an interesting story about a T206 sheet that Wagner was on that got chopped up into fish bait.
I'm thinking it's strips. Again, I'm thinking that's strips too. I'm thinking it's stone lithography back then. Yeah. So it's strips, or maybe 3 rows of strips, you know, kind of something like this where you can, because that putting that thing and getting it on a press just seems the process involved. So
I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it was.
We think it's a partial of a sheet, but you know, yeah, there you go. And we know that.
Yeah. How many sheets actually were issued by the American Lithograph Company? We just don't know.
There's no historical.
Yeah.
Year to year for them, get rid of those things. Yeah. That's the truth, right? It's like anything that we have, even the last 20 years. It's just like company has extras, like dump them. We need to make room for new stock. There's no historical sense. Some companies, Kellogg's is really good for retaining their past products. And a few other key companies, but most every other company has been bought and sold 50 times over since the turn of the century, if they're that old, and they're under a new branch, and nobody cares about the history of the 5th company back. Like, who cares? You know, just get rid of their stuff. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Well, Kellogg's is really interesting. I just bought a complete set of 61 Kellogg's football stars from across the pond, and So I thought that I was getting one card, the Bobby Charlton, and instead the guy gave me the entire set.
Oh,
I'm like, okay,
surprise.
But, yeah, exactly. You never know what you're gonna get overseas. You know?
Yeah, true enough.
So Chris has something very interesting here. Can Bobby briefly talk about early Z-tips hockey? What's Z-tip?
Did he misspell that? Because I've never heard of Z-tips.
Maybe he's talking about Tops.
Tops.
Okay. Tops hockey distribution. Early Tops hockey distribution.
Distribution in Canada as opposed to the U.S.
Yeah.
I think I actually did talk a little bit about it before, because Woody Gelman made, the licensing between Parker's and Tops was challenged in 1954, where Parker's paying $5,000 a team. Tops came in offering behind his back, behind George Kennedy, the owner of Parker's, behind his back. So they came in and offered $15,000 per team. He retained the 2 teams, the 2 Canadian teams, and the Americans, or Tops/O-Pee-Chee, got the rights to produce the American teams. Now, I think they had a tough go because the American teams, you had Gordie Howe and you had a few other players, but the main players were in Toronto and Montreal at that time. And George was completely fine, because it was easier to get pitchers. Yes, he's paying more, but remember, he's paying for 6 teams at $5,000, right? So he's paying $30,000. So he's still paying $30,000, but it's easier to get the pitchers. It's easy to produce, less write-ups, less, everything for him. So it really works out well for him. It's almost like a parallel move, for him. And his cards are selling way. And I know that Parker's outsold Tops for the very reason that, and we get into display boxes, is very few of the Parker's boxes have been found. Now, when a product is sold fast, it's like break up the box, next box up. And then when they're gone, they're gone. Where a lot of the tops stuck around because we didn't sell them by March, April, May, June, July. Let's stick them away downstairs or whatever. And that's what happens with leftovers. It's sort of like the survival rate when you get into series boxes. The later series are always found, opposed to the first series is always the hardest boxes to find, and or wrappers.
Yeah,
just the way it goes.
So George Kennedy, there's a connection there between him and Warren Bowman.
Yeah. Well, if you want me to run down the little bit that I know that when go ahead.
No, that sounds good.
Okay, so George Kennedy, he started the Hudson Foundation in 1946 with the ex-president of Wrigley's, where he had worked for about 5 years prior. And I guess they got to know each other. The guy must have retired or got out of the business, fired, who knows. And they both went into business making gum base. So that was really the thing. So they were producing gum base for a few blocks away in New York from Tops, but he's making gum base for Bowman Gum and a lot of other gum companies. And could be Selby Gum, could be in all those other companies. We don't know exactly. I'd love to go through the books, but just to find those books, it's impossible. It's almost like they destroyed them, probably. Nobody wants to go back that far. But regardless, so Kennedy got to know Bowman very well, and he really respected him, as he stated. He says, and they must have been pretty good friends in the industry. Now, Bowman, by that time, he's out of, sort of the card producing. He's coming up to that point.
Yeah, he retired in 52.
Yeah. And, and then they lost it to Tops and all that other stuff went on. But I'm sure there was a lot of stuff. And that's when Kennedy kind of came in and said, I think I'm going to go back up to Canada and start a gun company. Nobody else was doing it. It was a wide open market. And if he's down in New York and realizing how much gum base he's really selling, and he goes, probably Warren is sitting there going, do you know how many cards we put out with the amount of gum? George is sitting there going, hey, that's a good idea. Yeah. And he did start that way. So, and they were probably good friends for the rest of their lives. Like, it's a small community, all the gum companies, everybody kind of knew everybody.
Yeah. And
so they would go to the same parties. They would go to the same things. It's a small clique or club. When they had awards and different other things and, parties and what have you, the affluent would all stick together and they would know each other. But I don't think they were that bad rivals in a sense, because you're doing business in the United States. I'm doing business in Canada. Why don't we share the information? It's not where we're hurting anybody, right?
Yeah. And like, that's the one thing that, when you start to study the hobby and the not just the cards, but when you study the companies, you start to find out that this guy knows that guy. And so, like, Warren Bowman, he went to Wrigley to figure out basically how to operate a chewing gum company. And well, they thought he was a spy, so they kicked him out. But that's just Warren Bowman.
And George Kennedy as well.
Yeah.
Wrigley's.
So you got those guys.
O-Pee-Chee in 1909, they sold out Somerville Gum, which was the previous to O-Pee-Chee, to Wrigley's. See, Wrigley's is interesting. They never issued any cards, nothing too exciting that they did.
Actually, they did.
Exciting, I said.
Yeah. So, okay, they did actually issue a card set in 1933, and it was the 1933 Tattoo Orbit. And actually, it was an offshoot. So, Orbit was an offshoot. Originally, it was from
I've seen the Orbit gum, yes.
So that was a Wrigley product, and they brought back Orbit in like I think 96 or 2001 or something like that.
Really?
Chewing gum, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's funny because then you have Edward Fenimore, who was working for Bowman, and he starts his company, I believe, in 1947 or 48 or so. And
which was Philadelphia Chewing Gum.
Yeah.
Or better known as Swell Gum.
Yeah.
It's kind of when I wrote that article, I talked about uh, I think it was Bowman, and you know, some people say it's baloney that Parkhurst and Bowman, you know, I said baloney and I said Bloney, which is Blony, which actually Tops took over the Bloney name, but it was originally done by Warren Bowman back in the 30s. The Bloney gum. It's sort of like Bazooka was Tops, and O-Pee-Chee had their brand. Everybody, Fleer had their own Double Bubble. They had their names, right? So that was their name. So I don't know how many people got that in my writing, but anyways, there's always an Easter egg somewhere in there.
Yeah, I love trying to like just track down all this stuff and who went where and like you have D Long who was with Gowdy
Yeah.
and he was a long time treasurer. I actually did an article on D Long and found out where his factory was and it was South Boston and so
Hmm.
um he's really interesting because he's really the behind the scenes man for a lot of these card companies. Gum Products Inc. from like 1941 Double Play. That's him. And
Gum Products Inc. was Tops, right?
no, so
Sort of it.
Products
Yeah.
was Gum Products Inc. was um, basically they started in 1941 and it was a one-off issue, except until 1956. Sorry. So um, they actually hired Dean Long as their treasurer and vice president.
Mm.
And I think he may have been the one to actually tell them to start uh, a card set in 41. And then they got they got sued by Johnny Mize in 1941 because Mize didn't give them permission to issue his likeness.
So what happened to that company then?
They basically they got caught up in tax evasion in the early 50s.
Because I know the early Tops has Gum Products Inc. on some of their Hocus Focus and a few of the other cards say Gum Products Inc.
They might have taken them over the.
They might have. That's what I'm thinking. So as we put these things together, there's so many. It's so disjointed.
It's like an onion.
Yeah.
It really is. It's you take away one piece and you have another piece right below it, and then
it's a small industry, really, if you think about it. At that point.
So, yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. And so I just read right here. Where is it? Tony, Sensei Domino. Hey, Tony. So the baseball jersey debacle doesn't look very good for Fanatics, and I don't know if you've read anything about that.
A little bit, yeah.
So it's one thing if we're talking about the jerseys and like the hat that I have here that is already falling apart. Again, like I paid quite a bit of money for this hat, and it's like a year and it's already falling apart.
Really?
So, yep. So, and I'm not very thrilled about the fact that Fanatics actually, or it's a Fanatics cap. I didn't know that. I thought I was actually purchasing it from baseball.com or whatever it was from another, I guess.
Well, they own the licensing, so they have to stick their tab on it, right?
Yeah. So I'm not. That's just another thing, but I'm not very comfortable with Fanatics because it's just not the cards. If the ball players are complaining about the jerseys and the caps, it's one thing if we complain about it, it's something completely different if they complain about it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that though?
Well, I think quality control is certainly lacking. It's like when you buy something. I bought this new what do they call it, air fryer. I like the style of the other one. It broke after about a year and a bit, and I really like the design. It was better suited for what I needed it for, so I bought the second one. So I find out the cord is 8 inches shorter
Oh,
because I had an extension cord and it reached perfectly. And I'm going, oh, great. And then the top vibrates a little bit. There's a metal stainless steel piece, not even stainless steel, whatever it is, on the top, and it starts vibrating right off the hop. My other one took about almost a year, then it'll start vibrating. It seemed like it's lighter gauge, not as quality of a product made. It seems like they lessen everything for profit as they go along, and thus your hats, because hats usually lasted a good long time, but maybe they're lessening the profits. Increasing the profits and lessening the quality going forward. We don't really know, but
yeah.
it would seem so because a hat should last a little bit longer than a year.
Yeah, and I was really surprised.
I got some that are 8 years old. It's just like
Oh yeah,
they're still good, but
yeah. It's you kind of wonder too of the sports card side of this. So a lot of collectors have said since the 1990s when there was inserts and the players were autographing the cards on stickers or sticker autos, or I mean those are already turning into garbage, a lot of them.
yeah,
And then unfortunately, and then you have the Sharpie uh, incident from the 90s, and the Sharpies haven't held up
no.
from that era. And so you kind of wonder like what's going to happen to a lot of this modern stuff going forward. You know,
Is it being tested in any way, or is it just a new product that you go with and all of a sudden it's sort of like a lot of the packs from the what was it, early 2000s or late 90s, where they're all sticking together. They're just like bricks now. You can't even separate the cards.
it's a lot of the stuff from the 90s because I think it's the resin that they were using at the
Yeah.
time to coat the cards.
Little did they know they were meant to be open of period, and they weren't supposed to last that test of time. But unfortunately, and so if you put that box away, how much is that box really worth if you know that fact is going to happen?
Depreciate over
It's
time, I'm
junk
sure.
wax
Yeah,
in more ways than one.
yeah, yeah, and like the other thing too is I was thinking about was basically ripping cards or vintage packs open, um, and I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know how you feel about it. Like professional breakers,
It's just another thing for the hobby. I will still call it the hobby. I think there's two distinct differences in my head, but I'm not going to go as far as separating them. I'll just call them two different sides of the hobby, and there's the investment side, and then there's the collector side, and certainly the people down the middle as well. um, that's that side that I don't really care too much to take too much interest in. All this breaking and all the other stuff. It's just, and there's so much fraud going on. It opens the door that anybody can come in. If you're popular, you don't need a reputation. You don't need a resume. You just come in because you're the new hot guy, right?
Right.
So it's sort of an open marketplace, and that's what happens. Is you get all the thieves and all the guys who gravitate to where it's easy for them to come in and do what they need to do, or maybe just some get tempted along the way. Who knows? Because
Yeah.
we're all just human at the end of the day. So,
Do you still collect cards at all?
just particular ones, certain ones that I pursue, but no, I don't get into sets. I don't get into chasing down Gretzky rookies or anything like that. Once you've had them all, it's kind of hard to get back into them. So I'm sticking to rarity rules, and it's always ruled, and it will still rule going forward. That's where I'm going to be.
Do you go to any card shows at all?
Lots,
Lots.
lots. I'm always looking for stuff I haven't seen. So
So
it's the key for me, and it's a social thing too. Like, people don't realize that the social aspect of the hobby is probably one of the key things that keep us all together collecting. Is really just getting to know other people and hanging out and
yeah,
being with the boys or the girls, whatever you want to be.
yeah.
It's a fun place to be amongst like-minded people.
It's for me going to a show is more like going to like an interactive classroom,
Yeah.
and I never know what I'm gonna see, and I'm always there taking notes, and being a a professor, and I never know who I'm going to bump into, and just um the people are usually I've met so many great people through the hobby, and it's for me, I think at this point, because I'm finding less and less cards to collect because I've been in vintage for 30 years, and um, I've had the majority of it, and so for me at this point in time, I think I'm more interested in either trying to educate other people or trying to educate myself,
We're
and
collecting information.
research. Yes, yes. Although I would say that there are cards that I've never seen before, and when I was at the 2022 National, I did see this particular card right here. You
Einstein.
get, yep, it is
Okay.
Albert
Oh,
Einstein. 19. You see that?
yeah, it's an earlier picture of him too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's he's got gray hair instead of white. But I was really surprised when I was at the National because while I was there, I came across a dealer that had nothing but cricket and and non-sports cards and soccer and some of the stuff I had never seen before. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "What is this? What is this? Who's this?" And like it kind of brought me back to when I was a kid, and I had so many questions when I walked into that card shop when I was in the fourth grade, and the dealer really couldn't tell me what some of these, they were T206s, but
Mm.
other than that, I was like, the backs of them, like, what is, Piedmont, and I had all these questions, and unfortunately, like, nobody could tell me like what they were. So that kind of like sent me down a deep rabbit hole. You
Isn't
know,
it kind of funny that people can sell stuff and not know what it is?
yeah, yes, that happens all the time. Um, yeah, some dealers they are perfectly comfortable selling socks. It doesn't matter what it is,
It's a commodity. That's it. Yeah.
right? And they really don't. I don't think they really care too much about the hobby. That's it's just the money. But that's been like that for 30, 40 years now.
There's nothing wrong with the money part of it. It's there. It's not an evil. It's not anything. It's allowed. And if it
Yeah.
didn't happen, then we wouldn't get our cards because nobody would chase them down. You wouldn't find them for you. You'd have to go knocking on everybody's door to find them yourself. So they've
Yeah.
eliminated that process. So there is a fee to that, unfortunately. But
Yeah, it's just trying to acquire the card. I think it was easier to acquire for me personally. I think it was easier to acquire vintage when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old up into my 20s than it is now. I think it's just more expensive and just
sure.
trying to figure out ways to get around your problem of trying to acquire that card. Some people do it nefariously. They don't have any morals or scruples when
Mhm.
it comes to trying to acquire a card. Um, and it kind of reminds me of the Lord of the Rings in a way, you know. But yeah, and and so um, the Einstein card here was kind of interesting when I came across it because um, I had never seen this before, and it's German. I don't know if you guys can see the back of this. Probably not, but
Tobacco.
yeah, yeah, it is. I think it's Salem. I think it's Salem cigarettes. But the funny thing is, like, I was thinking about this. How did anything survive from Nazi Germany? You know,
Hmm.
it's
Who knows, really?
yeah,
People put stuff away.
yeah, and so like there's there's a lot of stuff still like hidden overseas that hasn't gotten or made it all the way here. And
Sure.
what I've heard too is that cricket is becoming more popular now than it was before. Um, and
Hmm.
and it's an interesting sport, and I was really kind of fortunate to get into to cricket and kind of study it because I wanted to study it, and I think that if you can show some of this stuff or show some cards to people and they may not have ever seen it before. They might want to get into either collecting or studying this sport or whatever it is, and just kind of, you got to show them. You got to show them this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So.
Did we want to take a look at Needham and go through a little bit
Absolutely.
of the tens or something before?
Yeah,
I gotta be
absolutely.
off by 8 o'clock. Let me see if I can share where's the other. Oh, there it is. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is gonna take me back, and I'll go back. There we go. All right. I'm gonna share my screen here. 1 second. Let me figure this out here. Present settings. Mirror camera, touch of your standard. Now we got to figure this out. Oh my gosh. Mirror my camera. No, watch it. That's fine. So it's not the settings. It's something else, is it not? Start cam, settings, present. Is it present? Oh, live video file, share screen. I think it's share screen. Okay, screen sharing, easiest with 2 monitors. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have 2 monitors, but anyways. Okay, there, Needham, share. Okay, can we see it?
There we go.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, let me get this here for 1 second. See if I can get that ribbon up there. Anyways, wait. All right, so we have this Needham here. Just have to go to it. I don't know why it's not. Okay, now you can see me. Okay, all right.
I can see, yeah.
I can't see, so that's why. But now I can see. I'm Needham here.
High tech is right, guys.
So this is when we come into Needham. We have the search at the very top up here. So I'll hit the search. You can choose any decade, 1910, 20, 30, up to the 80s. You can choose standard sports cards, food issue only, or collectible merchandise, or any, which is all, basically. But we're going to choose the 10s, and there's not really any premiums or anything in there, so we'll just hit standard cards. So there we have the full list of all the 10s. There's not very much in there. You know, there's the Murad, there's, so which one do you want to go into? The 1909, 10? You like the 1011, the C56?
Yeah, yeah, let's do that.
All right. So here we go. We have all the cards here, the full list. See, with this app, you can go in and just see the, you can just see the basic cards just on a quick scroll. But you really have to go into the cards. So if you want to see the premium section, then you can get into the write-up. And here's the write-up here for the for that issue.
Wow. You did the write-ups, right?
I did them all, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, really. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs. But that's for most of the pre-war. I tried to write as much as possible. And there's a lot to really talk about if you get into the fine details. So at the bottom of the list over here on the left-hand side, you can see these are the couple cigarette packages that have been found with cards within them. And so we can get out of the card write-up by lessening that, and then we can get into the set images. So, you know, we can get every card and enlarge it as much as you want, and then you can look around. There is a watermark on every card, every picture, but that's just to protect the images.
Okay.
So there, front and back of every card: Joe Hall, Bill Holden, Joe Malone, Ed Oltman.
So do we know when these things were printed? Where they were printed? Like who the printer was?
Yeah, we do. They had to be printed here in Canada. I know it was thought that the C55 were possibly printed in England because of this design. If you look at the design on the back here, you can see that that's very sort of English looking. If you compare it to the other sets, it's definitely different. But this one seems to be, I don't know, for some reason it has that English. It's really funny how the first year, 1909-10, they had the crossed hockey sticks. And then they went to this design the next year. And then in 12, 13, the C57s, they went back to the hockey stick design. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go out of there. Do we have the printing stone? We should have it here.
So I know with a lot of the British stuff, the Marsden, Sun, and Hall were their printers from like I want to say like the 1910s through the 1940. They did they did all their stuff over Great Britain.
I got you. It's the C50. There we go. What's that? Sorry, it's the C56 that has the printing stone. If you can go back and look at that.
Okay.
Oops. Oh, I just went out of it. My mistake. Okay, tens, cards, go. All right. So we have the C56. There it is. So this is where the printing stone was found. And I'll give you a little show of it. There's all the cards down the left side. And we can go over to the right side. And where is the printing stone? Here. It should be here somewhere.
What's your favorite set of this?
The favorite set from the 10s?
Yeah.
Oh, it's C57.
Okay.
Like I said, this is my favorite card from the 10s. Is the Percy Listen. Yeah. He became the commentator with Foster Hewitt for the games on the radio for the French. Yeah, very interesting. So the printing stone should be here, but I don't see it for some reason. I don't know. Let's go to the end here. Oops.
These are great.
Oh, there's the News of the Lawn. So we have the number 37, which was confirmed on the stone. The set only has 36 cards. But for some reason, a 37, people called it a salesman sample. But the number 37, I think there's been about 3 found. And everybody wonders about where it came from. But it was confirmed on here's the printing stone here. So you can see all the numbers. Oh, you can see on the numbers match. Here's the series. See, here's the back of the card. That's the template design. Now on the inside, it says shaving cream, but they would utilize every inch of the stone. A lot of this was imported from Europe. And so after they finished using that, the inside was the player picture. So those were done on separate stones. But all the names of the players are here. But we do look at it, and it gets into number 37, as you can see right here. Right there is number 37. So it was initially part of the set. Was it a salesman sample? We don't know. The interesting part is, I think, who's it? Art Ross has 2 cards in here, and somebody else has 2 cards. I think Newsy was supposed to, Newsy the Launch who was 36 and 37, should have been maybe a second card they were maybe going to add for him. And then they went, we don't have a different image. Like the other 2 Art Rosses have 2 different images, but they didn't have a different image. So they started printing, why are we doing the same card and then just with another number? So they may be discontinued.
Or like, the 1911 T205, you have one player with 2 different images. And, was that because either the player didn't like the image or somebody else didn't like the image, or maybe that one player was pulled from production and they needed another player in its place? And
yeah.
Could that have happened with this case as well?
That's what I'm thinking. Because we have 2 that are Art Ross. So these are the thumbnails. And they come up. You can actually scroll through them quickly. And we can see that Art Ross has 2, but 2 separate images. Marty Walsh. There's Art Ross in one. He has the...
That's awesome. It's an awesome card.
Yeah, it is a nice looking card, for sure. Like, I don't dislike them. It's very good rendition, for sure. Actually, the C56s are very nice looking cards. Whoever did the artwork did a great job. But there's the second image, Art Ross.
I like that too. It's almost the same. It is the same image. It's just a different.
It's just a different jersey. Yeah. And it was easy to do on the printing stone, I would imagine. And there's another person too. There's a big Fred Taylor. Everybody likes Fred Taylor.
Cyclone. Right.
Cyclone Fred Taylor. Yes, that's his nickname. He's nowhere Cyclone, but I think that was his nickname in the newspapers. Bruce Stewart. So you can just quickly scroll through it this way. Like I'm just scrolling down, and you can just scroll through the list of players in a thumbnail. If you want to go into bigger pictures where you can enlarge them, you have to go. I think Lester Patrick has 2 cards too. I'm not too sure who it is at this point.
He's got a great history.
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah, the Patricks for sure. Tom's, Johnson, see a lot of these names we don't know very much of. They were just played in the hockey league, but some of the guys went on to having trophies named after them, what have you. There's the New Zealand card. So you have the 36. Wow. You have the 36, and then you have the 37. Now the color is off on this particular one. We don't know why, because the other ones really are kind of similar color scheme. You know, the backs really are basically the same.
So do you think that that wasn't issued to the public? Do you think that it was?
It obviously wasn't issued to the public. They must have printed off some and then just said, okay, hey, listen, it's the same image. Why are we going to bother? Right. You know, you can say it's a salesman sample, but why, a salesman sample, why would you print an extra salesman sample when you can just give somebody one from the set?
Right.
Take a random one, take a, an Art Ross and just do it. And just hand it out hand out salesman samples. You can just take a whole set and just hand it out to one to each guy and say, here's a sample. Why would you have to do a separate, I know New Zealand was a big star at that time, but there's quite a few other ones too. So why did they do that? I guess we'll never know.
Yeah.
But at least we found the stone.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I don't think it's a salesman sample, to tell you the truth. I think it was hold.
Yes. Yeah, me too. I just don't think they found another image. So
how many? So there's 37 cards in that set.
Yeah.
How many?
Well, the set here, it'll say up here, so 48. So what you can do is you can click off these and save. Oh, I got him. I need him. I got him. So when you save this list at the end, so you would go up here and you'd click save after you clicked off the ones you have and maybe leave the ones blank that you need. Then when you open up the page at that beginning page, when we first started, you can save your list will come up every time. So every set that you have listed will come up at that blank window, which is blank because it's meant for you to save your sets. And then you click off and you click save, and then all your sets will go right to that list. And you can go to a show and go, okay, where's that set? Okay, I need him. Great. And it'll all be listed there for you. So that's what these are there for. So and it's graded between VG and EX. It's $42,000 set. And they're all priced accordingly. I've went through this list with a fine tooth comb. So these are, questionable, because when you get into EX and you're talking about grading, it really takes it another step above. So it's almost like an $80,000 set, once you get into graded cards, because then EX is pretty high. But I didn't want to go to GVG because it didn't really bridge the gap too much. So I kept it that way.
Is this also a price guide?
It's right there. Yeah, everything's priced right here, right across here. You can see.
Wow.
All these are VG. Now the best part is you can see all the rookies are bold. Moran is not. Hall is. Holden is not. Oatman is. And it says rookie card beside them anyways. But if you get a goaltender, where can we find a goaltender here? It'll have a G beside it. There it is. Oops. Let me go this way. It's a little easier. So you have Bert Lindsay. So he's a rookie card and a goaltender. If he's a Hall of Famer, the Hall of Famer come right up here. But otherwise, you have rookie and goaltender, and it's bold where this is not bold. So
how come you put goaltenders?
There's a lot of goalie collectors.
Oh, okay.
And it's nice to identify because it looks that. See, most of the cards later on have pads and everything, but Bert Lindsay doesn't. He's just referee. He played with. There's nothing that indicates him being a goaltender.
Oh wow.
So we have it here. So every goaltender has been listed in the whole app.
Is that the Run Through Millionaires?
It is.
It's
Yeah.
a very famous team from.
Yeah. Well, that's our capital. Renfrew's out in Ottawa, or right next to Ottawa. So, very popular team at that time because Ottawa has a very storied history. Unfortunately, today not so much. But I mean, back then they, had King Clancy on there. They had so many people coming up through the ranks there. Yeah, and there's the cigarette packages. So, $200-300. It's not really that expensive. And then you consider a 1933 wrapper goes for $32,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. And then you just have the Murad, where they have different variations of, the postcard. Rochester is hockey, and they had you could send away for this large postcard. You'd have to send away the regular cards, which are there's a pack. There's the picture coupon, which you would factory number 7 district. There you go. On the receipt of 15 of these coupons, which is packaged in Murad cigarettes, you receive posted paid handsome lithograph picture of one of the prominent college series. So that's a big issue. There's only a couple hockey, which is good. But see, Rochester is the only team, number 12. So those are the ones you could choose from. Yale, all the universities. So an interesting issue. And the cards are coming up. There's 2 different types of. Oh, those are postcards. That's the premium. Sorry, my mistake. So let's go back into the cards. And these are the cards. Beautiful gold border on them. You can't see it in the picture. Just does it no justice. That they did 2 series. So, and they were packaged in these Turkish cigarettes, which they had here in Canada too, as well. And like I said, actually, I'm going to go to the Sweet Capitals because see, there's a rating system too on these. The app has 3, 4, 3, 5, 4. So they're all rated on 5, a 1 to 5 basis. So the Sweet Capitals are a number 5, a 5 out of 5. They're very rare, very hard to find. But the gorgeous postcards.
Oh wow! I have seen the Cyclone Taylor in this set. Really nice.
Yeah.
How were those issued, by the way? Do you know?
Nope, we haven't figured that out yet. I wonder what the write-up is. So if I put done, let's see the write-up. Okay, so it's not too many. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. But I try to go over as much as I can with it. And
there's obvious advantages of doing a write-up on your site than there are of doing a book.
Yeah, there is. Now, see, the biggest problem here we had is that it says they're printed in Britain on the postcard. So everyone thought it was made in Britain because, British American Tobacco Company, that, right. Which this was ITC, which was Imperial Tobacco Company, which was a branch of that. But I think the postcards were generically printed there, and then the pictures came here and got made.
So one thing I know that at this point in time, the American printers were getting their ink from Germany, and that stopped after or during World War One. Obviously, you couldn't get any ink from Germany because we were fighting a war there. But yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why in the 1920s that you don't have any really color cards in America is because we couldn't get the ink from.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
He's scary looking.
Yeah, he is.
But most everybody was, the cards used a lot of latitude with the design on the cards from the original photos, as we can see. I did a nice comparison one time between the Sweet Capital photos and the C56 cards. C55, sorry. And that it really shows you quite a bit. So you can skip. It only loads 5 cards at a time. All right, it loads 10, 31 to 40. So 10 at a time. So you can skip right to the end. And,
that's nice.
Yeah, and it saves you for loading. That's all. But yeah, you can enlarge and hold it and look a little closer.
Is it the Canadians, Montreal Canadiens?
That would be the Montreal Triple A's, I guess, at that time.
Oh,
Yeah. See, they're all of these are, they're not the original jerseys with you can see they're cropped in there. They're obviously done afterwards, which is very interesting when you look at some of the jerseys. See, that's been done after the fact.
yeah, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can definitely tell.
Yeah, you can tell. 100%.
Yeah.
But some of the other ones, I think they're almost all like that. If you can kind of look at them. No, that one looks like it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. The border of the symbol there.
Yeah. That one's been. See, that one's not real. You can see. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the artwork, which is very interesting. So
it's a great set.
It certainly is. So
is this site, if anyone wants to become a member, how do they do that?
So what they have to do is premium access details. You can go here. It's $4.99 per month. Billed 6 months, so it's $29.99.
Oh, that's not bad at all. It's great.
It's really low. Well, we didn't want any banners running across the top here. We didn't want all that stuff. So we just wanted to keep it clean. We want to make it affordable so more people will get it. So, I have access right now. So you normally click this and it would say activate. So you just put your credit card in, boom, and it's done. And then you have instant access.
Nice.
And that's basically it from there. So here, like I said, most of these cards are from the postcards. A lot of the pictures, right? So, and anyways, so that is all.
Great.
So let's get out of this. I think I can just exit out and we're good. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, great. Anyways, yeah, we could. I don't know if we got to everything that we might have wanted to talk about, but we were kind of all over the board there. I hope you guys enjoyed the little romp through a little bit of history.
I enjoyed it. This was great.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun because there's so many things that lead into another thing, and every story continues on from another story. So, it's always fun to talk about that stuff, and we could do this on a monthly basis and just keep going. It's just really, there's nothing planned. It was just sort of like, all right, whatever pops up.
Yeah, exactly. We'll go down this road. Now we'll go down this road.
Yeah, do a little bit on the app and what have you. But there's more things to look at the app and, that I'd like to take people through to show them a little bit better. So maybe at another time, next month or something, we can do something and take it from there.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Bobby, thank you so much as always. We'll have to do this again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make it a regular thing. We'll have a little sideshow.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. Thank you for stopping by, and we will see you in another episode. Have a good one.
Thanks again.